What's up, everybody? Brothers, sisters, psychonauts, and seekers of truth. It is Ananka, and welcome to my bazaar. Today I'll be reading the Norse legend, War of the Gods. This version comes from the book Viking Spirit by Daniel McCoy. With all that being said, let our story begin. One day, as the Aesir gods and goddesses went about their business in Asgard, a sorceress traveled up the Rainbow Bridge to the entrance of their fortress. At the gate, she gave her name as Gullveig, lust for gold, although she was surely none other than Freya, the beautiful witch goddess of the Vanir. The gods were wary of her, and all agreed that those who practiced sorcery weren't the best company to keep. Nevertheless, in the end, they were won over by her charms and her promise to bring them success in all realms of life. Once in Asgard, Gullveig began going into her trances and running spiritual errands on behalf of whichever deities would pay her handsomely. For a while, the Aesir appreciated her talents. But as time went by, her magical interventions in the affairs of the gods created strife amongst them. Each deity became jealous of the unearned privileges that others were gaining, especially when they allowed one god or goddess to win an upper hand in a dispute against another. Eventually, the discord amongst them reached a fever pitch. The Aesir held an emergency assembly to decide what to do about the situation. And in the end, they decided that they had to get rid of Gullveig and make her atone for what she had done to them. The only fitting way to do both, they agreed, was to put the sorceress to death. They seized Gullveig and tied her up. Then they hurled spears at her from all directions, so many that, under ordinary circumstances, her body would have been reduced to one scarcely recognizable, spear-ridden wound. But the gods failed to take into account the sorceress's ability to turn away weapons, and the sharp points blithely bounced off of her. She laughed gleefully and mockingly at her would-be executioners. The Aesir then resolved to burn her. But as with the spears, the flames failed to do so much as singe a toe or a finger. They attempted to burn her no less than 3 times, adding more fuel to the flames each time, but each time they accomplished nothing but triggering a long train of scornful cackling from their captive. But the Aesir did accomplish one thing with their attempts to murder Freya. They earned the vengeful ire of her kin, the Vanir, who promptly declared war on the Aesir. The two sides met on the plain of battle, and when Odin cast his spear over the Vanir, symbolically sacrificing them to himself, both sides knew that the fight was on. A furious struggle ensued. Both the Aesir and the Vanir fought valiantly. Though the Aesir had more and better warriors, the Vanir had Freya's sorcery on their side. With it, she reduced the mighty planks of Asgard's walls to a heap of splinters and dust. After the fighting had stretched to encompass many battles, both sides found that they were evenly matched. Neither could gain a decisive advantage over the other, and both were growing wary of what had proven to be an unwinnable conflict. So the warring parties sat down together and forged a truce, agreeing to live in harmony with each other and to share as one body the tribute humans paid to them through their sacrifices. To seal their pact, they exchanged hostages. The Vanir deities Freya, Frey, and Nord went to live with the Aesir, while the Aesir deities Mimir and Honir were sent to the Vanir. The Aesir were quite satisfied with the gifted gods and goddess they had received. Unfortunately, however, the same cannot be said of the Vanir. Though Honir had been presented to them as a keen, just, and perceptive ruler, they found him to be dismayingly indecisive. The Aesir knew that Mimir was the wise and impartial one, and Honir's beautifully fitting pronouncements were simply repetitions of what Mimir whispered into his ear. Honir made up for his lack of wits with his strength and courage in battle, but the Vanir never tested him in that field, and remained unaware of his martial abilities. Neither did they realize that Mimir was the source of Honir's apparent wisdom. All they knew was that at times, Honir would become inexplicably incapable of issuing judgments, and would stammer out an anxious, let others decide. They never noticed the pattern. When Mimir was present, Honir spoke beautifully and righteously. But when he was absent, Honir could barely speak at all. Thinking they had been sorely tricked, the enraged Vanir beheaded Mimir and sent the god's severed head to Asgard. When Odin laid eyes on it, he was overcome with grief, for Mimir had been one of his most trusted counselors. By that time, however, Odin had learned some of Freya's magic. He embalmed the head of his fallen companion with herbs and chanted spells over it, preserving it and giving it life once again. From that day, Odin consulted Mimir's head whenever he was in grave need of advice.